Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we're going to be diving into another tier list. Now today we're going to be specifically focusing on the jungle. We're going to talk about what jungle picks I think are good, and this is kind of a mix between like 5-stack queue and solo queue, because obviously that does have a bit of a difference, but I'm trying to keep it as objective as possible, although it is a subjective list. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, what you would do and do not agree with, and let's go ahead and dive into it. So S tier, let's go ahead and put the first S tier jungler on the list. It's Rampage. This, in my opinion, Rampage is, in my opinion, the best jungler in the game. He fits in every comp. He brings good damage, good CC. He's got great ganks, great clear. He's very jungle oriented. Passive is all about the jungle, and he just is never a bad pick. Like he's just hands down one of the best junglers, and yeah, I think he's absolutely phenomenal when it comes to the jungle role. All right, now one of the jungle picks that I'm going to put in A tier, and it's actually not one of my favorite picks in the game, but it just feels very, very strong, is going to be Crunch. I think Crunch is a very phenomenal jungler. He's really not my cup of tea when it comes to like what he brings to the team. I think post nerf he just doesn't. He feels a little feast or famine, where if you do fall behind, it gets a little hard to want to play this character or to be this character. But if he gets ahead, oh my god, he is incredibly strong, can really snowball games and take over. But he doesn't have like a super high impact ultimate compared to some of the other characters that you feel the weight of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, his ultimate is high impact when you're ahead, but if you're behind, like that extra empowered move, it doesn't really feel like it gets the job done. But Crunch is incredibly strong, and that's why we're going to put him in the A tier. Now, next on the list, let's go on ahead and start filling out some of the bottom. Don't do it, right? Like Decker jungle. I don't even think we really need to explain a lot of these kinds of picks, and I can just go on ahead and flood this whole list here. Don't play these characters in jungle. Just don't do it, right? There's no reason to play any of these supports or mids or anything like that in the jungle. They're not going to really get the job done, and so I would heavily advise against it. All right, next on the list, and this is where it really starts to get like kind of meh to me. Like I would really not consider taking these characters, or if you do take them, just know that you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. It's going to be Countess. Countess jungle is not good. She can do it, but she is not good at jungle. Her clear is way too slow. She can get invaded, which puts her behind. Then it gets to the point where the jungle's scaling up and she can't keep up. And you know, she's a mid laner, man. She's not even an off laner either. She's just a mid laner. If she does anything else, it just feels like she just doesn't get the proper roam that she wants, and she doesn't get the farm as easy. It's hard, she gets beat up, and so Countess jungle, you can do it. I don't advise I don't advise it, and I would probably advise against it for sure. Now, the C tier is going to be the like, you can, but you really shouldn't, we all know you're trolling kind of jungle tier. And this is where I'm going to put like the 80 carries, honestly. Like, you can literally force your way into jungling them, but you really shouldn't, and we all know what you're doing when you do, right? It's like, stop that right now. We know what you're doing. I don't think that you should be playing them. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw another one in there with that as well. It's Narbash. He's not the worst jungler in the game, that's for sure. And you're gonna it's kind of crazy that he's not in the just don't do it, but technically he might be a better jungler than any of the 80 carries. And I'm not really organizing it from left to right, not really, but you get my point. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about the bottom of the list. All right, let's go ahead and look at the rest of these picks and decide what else is going to go where. I've got one more S tier pick, so I'm going to kind of leave y'all guessing for a little bit as I continue to go through the list. But it's no secret I'm not a huge fan of Feng Mao, but he's not useless. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put him in B tier, but the thing with Feng Mao is that, like, he's way better than Countess jungle. Way better than Countess jungle. So she's like very, very bottom B tier, or like hovering high C tier. He's at like the top of B tier. And it's just for the sake of spreading out the tier list a little bit. They're not really on the same tier when it comes to jungle, so maybe I should do something like this because I think it's like a little bit more accurate. Although, that said, she's way stronger in jungle than any of these other picks. So you get the point. Feng Mao, he just needs a little bit of love, but he's not useless. I think he's pretty good. He feels very, very solid, but he just needs a little bit of love when it comes to balancing, in my opinion. Sevarog Jungle, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the B tier. I think that Sevarog Jungle, there's only one thing that makes me not like this character in Jungle, and it's just the fact that you're not getting quite as much farm for your stacks, for your passive. So building up the stacks, like the stacks for your passive, takes some time, but honestly, he's kind of so bad in lane that Jungle might be his better role anyways. But that said, relatively speaking, not the best jungler in the game. So, you know, he hits a conservative B tier. I think it's okay. It's got some really good ganks, really good ganks. And then late game, this character is an absolute animal. So there's something there, but it's not the strongest thing in the world. All right, let's take a look at Steel Jungle. Honestly, I think Steel Jungle is A tier. There's a funny thing to be said about Steel and Grux. Let's go ahead and do this right now. Steel and Grux are like interchangeable between off lane and jungle. In my opinion, perfectly fine. It doesn't really matter which one goes where. It kind of depends on the lane matchup, which one you should put where. But at the end of the day, if you're solo queuing, pick whichever one you want for jungle or for lane. They're both phenomenal picks. Yeah, Steel can jungle just fine. Has great gank, scales great into team fights, is one of the best, if not the best hero in the entire game. And Grux does the same thing. He's insanely strong in lane and jungle. He's got phenomenal ganks, really strong team fight presence. He can get kited, but you have to play him properly. But Grux is just an animal, absolute animal, and yeah, really strong. All right, let's go ahead and rip the band-aid off. I said there was one more S tier, and I don't know if y'all are going to agree with me. It's Chimera. You might be thinking, wait, it's not Kallari? No, it's not Kallari. It's Chimera. This character he's the other jungler of the game, right? Like the one that they developed and designed just to be a jungler. And it shows. Like, he's got so much objective presence. You cannot ignore a Fangtooth if there's a Chimera. You have to be paying attention to it. Chimera has really easy engages, has a really basic kit, but is very effective. You can play this very tanky, you can play it very damage heavy. Chimera is really strong. He's really strong. I think he is the clear other best jungler in the game, and it's just not very close when it comes to the difference between the S tiers and, say, the A tiers. The A tiers are just very good at jungle. You can definitely fit them in a team comp, and they fit amazingly well. Speaking of the A tiers, we're gonna go ahead and fill the rest of this in. Now, here's the thing with Kallari. It's another feast or famine. If you do fall behind on Kallari, if you get invaded on Kallari, you're just kind of like chasing, and Kallari doesn't scale into the late game super well. Like, it's just, and I don't even mean that. Kallari actually scales in the late game pretty damn well, but team fighting with a squishy assassin is always going to be harder than just being able to dive in and do damage, right? You have to be a little bit more tactful, and so it's not quite as easy. But Kallari can absolutely take over games. So I get, especially if you're a solo queue player, I definitely get the perspective of thinking Kallari might be an S tier jungle. I don't really hold that perspective. I think it's very strong, but it's also a little bit more volatile than, say, Rampage or Chimera. And Richter jungle, yeah, if you don't know, you need to know. It's incredibly strong. The early clear, it's a little bit like Steel. It's not great, but then you kind of get the ball moving, and you have Richter, right? Like, that's the point. It's Richter. Richter's broken, and the character is incredibly strong. Brings hooks. Hook ganks are really strong, and the potential to use the hook like an additional smite or like a damage burst on objectives is really strong. If you haven't played Richter jungle, I was not really a Richter jungle believer until I played it a little bit more. It's really strong. It's very strong. And yeah, this is what I'm thinking of the jungle tier list in my eyes. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one, but this is what I think. Friends, if you haven't played any of these junglers, give them a try. Let me know your thoughts. Drop a comment on this and let me know what you would change around, and if you agree. Again, I know there's some hot takes in here, but it's just perception, because I play a lot of 5 stacks too, so I've seen the difference between like what a Chimera can do in a 5 stack versus what a Kallari can do in a 5 stack. And honestly, Chimera is like super consistent, and Kallari can be a little volatile, and so that's what I'm leaning into. So thank you so much for watching. Drop a like in this video, subscribe for future Predecessor content, leave me a comment. Like I said, I would really appreciate it. I'll try to reply to some of them or give some reasonings if you feel like I missed anything. But as always, be sure to be kind to one another, tell someone you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.